Welcome to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, my co-host and the founder and CEO of Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day. This week, Wade and I are sharing our top 5 tips for adding more positivity to your life. Even though the world provides lots of opportunities to focus on the negative, the path from surviving to thriving really requires us to shift our mindset to one of possibility and opportunity. So, let's head over to the show. So Wade, this week for the podcast, we are going to talk about positivity and how you can be a lovely ray of sunshine for all the people around you. So I know as we're coaching folks when we're in our live trainings, we talk a lot about how can you cultivate maybe a greater sense of positivity in your life. I think we can probably all agree that we live in a world where positivity isn't always that frequent or that common. And so I think part of being on that journey from surviving to thriving is trying to sort of weed out some of that negativity and replace it with something that is a little more productive, which often is more positive. So Wade, start me off. When you think of positivity and maybe making a shift in your attitude, what do you normally think of?
Yeah, when I was coming up in my career and became a manager for the first time, I realized that I needed more resources, and so talked to my boss and got permission to sign up for some online resources and then some area conferences and that kind of stuff. And everything was about self-improvement. And I, like to kind of throw myself into stuff from time to time when I see something that interests me. So I started listening to all of these audio recordings that they had, and they had free books and that kind of stuff on there. And I came across an audio recording that literally changed my life. So the recording was with Coach Joe Gillum, and Coach Joe, who's no longer with us, did this interview, and it's obviously recorded over the phone, but it actually changed my life. And everything that he talked about was exactly what I needed being a first-time manager. And so, I believe very firmly that there are no coincidences in life, and that was meant to come into my life at that point in the game. But it was talking about how to lead effectively. And one of the first things that he taught me was how you think influences how you feel, and how you feel is going to determine how you behave or how you respond. And, that's something that we talk about here at MJST quite a bit. But, the other pieces of the recording that really stood out were, how do you hold people accountable? And, you have to communicate expectations before you do so, that kind of stuff. But the whole recording, I bet I listened to 3, 4, 5 dozen times because it was so relevant to everything that I was doing as a first-time manager. And one of the things, in terms of thoughts determine your feelings, determine your behaviors, is you have to take in positive information. You have to take in positive content. It's not that you can't, watch TV from time to time, but make sure the majority of your time is taking in the right information. The old saying, garbage in, garbage out, that's definitely very true. But what's interesting, Amanda, is that when I changed and I started to take in more positive information, my career just took off. And it really changed everything for me. And it wasn't just my career, it's my whole life. My whole life changed as a result of this recording. And so I'm all about just taking in positive content. And so I was really looking forward to this recording here today.
What I think is interesting about your story there is you said, when I started shifting my thinking into a more positive frame of mind, it really, my career took off. It opened some doors for me. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that when we have a more negative mindset, it's automatically very limiting, right? We're thinking of what won't work. We're thinking of why things are problems versus when we start to shift to a more positive mindset, we start to shift to a thought pattern of opportunity, right? So when things are going well or when we're appreciating things, it's automatically like, okay, what could I do, or what's possible for me, or what's the opportunity that's in front of me. So I think it's really key to start shifting some of that thinking, because it actually is what can move you forward in a more opportunistic standpoint versus a more limiting standpoint. It's interesting how you talk that Coach Joe talked about the connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Because for anybody who's ever been through one of our trainings or who has listened to some previous podcasts, we talk about our story framework. Actually, on the last episode, Mark and I talked about the story framework, which is very, very similar, right? Thoughts, feelings, actions, results. And so it's always interesting to me how some of these same themes pop up over and over and over again, no matter, who you go and talk to who is successful. It also makes me think of that phrase that's out there, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And so it's like, am I choosing my 90% to be really negative or pouty or grumpy, or do I want my 90% to be, more positive, thinking of possibility and whatnot? So, we're actually, for this conversation, going to focus a lot about that 90% of how you react and how that can help you moving forward. So, Wade, what you and I did is we put together a top 5 list. So we are actually going to talk about 5 ways that you can add more positivity to your life so that you can start to see these changes that I think all of us have experienced by really trying to focus on the positive of the positive side of things. So let's start with number 1. Be purposeful about who you spend time with. So Wade, talk to me about people and your network and the impact that this has on your positivity.
Yeah. Do you want me to start naming names on who's positive, who's negative? Is that kind of where you're thinking, Amanda?
Yeah. Give me your list of all your friends and who's the good ones. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Let's talk about it at a high level.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll keep it higher level. So, as you take in different information and you surround yourself with positive people, you are going to respond differently. And I remember when I started making that shift, some of the people that I thought I was good friends with, all of a sudden we started to run out of things in common. And the old Jim Rohn saying, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Very, very true. And so making sure that, we're being purposeful in where we invest our time. And so, if you look at your calendar and you see, here are my priorities, here are the things that I get to do, making sure there's enough space in there to get better and to surround yourself with people who are also forward thinking and looking to get better themselves.
Yeah, when I think of being purposeful about how you or who you spend your time with, for whatever reason, I always think about high school. Now, maybe if you're a parent, you think about this with your kids now, or maybe you just think back to your own high school experience, right? We all remember those kids who were like, man, that kid has a lot of potential, but they are hanging out with the wrong people, right? And so I think that continues into your adult life, right? If you are spending your time with people who are negative, people who don't have ambitions, right? Like that is going to hold you back, just like it would have for that kid in high school who has the, bad friends or the lazy friends or the friends who get in trouble, right? It really limits your potential because you will rise to the average of the people you spend the most time with. And so if the average is pretty low, you may not be rising as high as you could if you surround yourself with more, more ambitious, more goal oriented, more positive, more sunny, just type personalities. And so really consider, even in all of your relationships. So it might be work relationships, your friends, it might be your significant other, right? If these are people who are bringing you down versus rising you up, it might be time to find some new people in your network.
Yeah, I remember when I was first getting started in production ag. Some of you know that I started out feeding cattle with our family operation. And every morning as I was getting into the feed wagon, my station was turned to the local radio talk show. And, I thought it was funny at the time, but it was very sarcastic, very edgy. And when I would listen to that content, and then when I would go interact with other people, guess how I would respond? I would respond with sarcasm. And when I made that shift away from that content into how do I get better at audiobooks and that kind of stuff, it was amazing the different people that I began to attract into my life.
Yeah, that law of attraction is has something to behold there. So, not only are you attracted to people who have that energy, that positive energy, but if you are that positive person, they will be attracted to you accordingly. One resource that I think is relevant to this topic is one that Mark has mentioned in some past episodes, but it's the book Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And I think that's just a really good book if you say, man, the people I'm hanging around with are not good for me and my positive attitude and my journey to thriving. So I need to find some new people. Never Eat Alone is really good about how to really strategically and purposefully expand your network. I think some of the tips are, some of them are good for everybody. Some of them might be great for certain people. But if you're looking for, okay, yeah, I want to raise the average of the people I spend the most time with, but how do I do that? I think that's a really good resource to tap into. Wade, any other thoughts on being purposeful about the people that you're spending time with if you want to be more positive?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how, control the controllable and, just focus on yourself and the people around you may not be positive now, but, maybe over time, as they see a change in you, you never know when that might make an impact on them. We see that in, personal relationships. We see that in work. And when I stop focusing on what's wrong with other people and just building myself, my own foundation, it's amazing what kind of impact you can have in the relationships around you.
Yeah, absolutely. So then number 2 on our list, I think this is probably one of the biggest ones. And I know we've got it at number 2, but it is critical. And that is if you want to experience more positivity in yourself, you have to do those things, Wade, that you've been mentioning, which is invest in yourself. I'll repeat, you did it the opposite in the phrase earlier when you said garbage in, garbage out. And I'm going to flip it the other way, good stuff in, good stuff out. So Wade, when you are investing in yourself, let's first talk about the what. What do you do, or what type of content what is the good stuff you're putting in so that you can get good stuff out that you would recommend that other people consider?
Yeah, so earlier in my career, when I was calling on farmers, I would use music to kind of get my mood in the right lane. So if I went from one sales call to the next, let's say the first one didn't go well, I turn on my favorite music and kind of get my mind in a better place. So I used music, and that was before I heard this recording that we mentioned earlier. At that point, I started to listen to a lot of audiobooks. So it used to be that if I had an hour drive, I'd just oh man, now I have to drive this hour back home or whatever it is. And I would just always dread that highway time. And when I started to take in and listen to audiobooks, audible.com or whatever platform you use, that I started to look forward to road time. And that was a big shift for me. Now here in last year, I've listened to a lot more YouTube stuff and a lot more podcasts. I'll just search a certain specific topic that I want to dig into, and just find different things. But I think we mentioned it last time you and I did a recording, Amanda. But when you surround yourself with people who share those resources, that's really fun. That's exciting, because then you've got other people who are saying, hey, this is really worthwhile. So then you don't have to find everything yourself. But there's a lot of different things you can do. There's just unlimited resources out there online available to you for free.
Absolutely. I think all of us on our team has some version of like a motivational music and or YouTube video playlist. I know Mark's got one that we share out with folks that I'll include a link to in the show notes. I've got my own iTunes playlist, especially when I'm getting up to go to the gym in the morning and I want to pump myself up. Those are all my positive girl go get it type songs. And so the power of music is to me is always amazing. Really important. Again, you mentioned books, whether that's audio books or regular books. And I on the books especially, I kind of want to say like it doesn't have to just be personal growth, personal development type books. I think we talk about a lot of those just because of the realm that we run in. But there's fiction books out there that can be great at inspiring, at motivating. It's really cheesy, but I'm a huge Harry Potter fan and I love settling into a reread of Harry Potter just because to me it's fun, it's inspiring, it's overcoming obstacles. So don't think that if you're looking to take in positive content that it only has to be personal growth or personal development. I think there's a lot of good other types of content out there that can be equally as motivating and inspiring and positive. So that was just something I was thinking. Wade, what were you going to say?
Yeah, one of the things, a statistic that I came across is that the average CEO reads 5 books a month, 3 to 5 books a month. And yeah, and when you think about it, they're probably not doing all that reading because they have extra time on their hands. There's other statistics that show that the CEO works as many hours as anybody in the company or executive leaders do. So I actually had a personal goal of reading 5 books a month, and I averaged that over the course of 3 years. So different types of books, you've got the self-improvement, but there's also a ton of great biographies out there. So you don't have to figure everything out yourself. You can learn from other people and how they overcame their obstacles. You mentioned fiction, and one of my favorite books of all time is Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And that is, I'm actually reading it for the 3rd time now, but just a tremendous story from like 50, 60 years ago. So, it doesn't really matter what you're taking in, but just make sure that it's something that is helping you to get better, whatever you're looking for in terms of self-improvement.
Yeah. I want to hit on a few other strategies as well. So we've hit on music, books, videos, podcasts. I think all of those are great from a content standpoint. A couple of other things that I want to touch on. Obviously, we are big fans of meditation around here. And I think that can be a really powerful tool. Maybe you don't always think about it in terms of positivity, but I think sometimes the reason we're drawn to the negative is because of how much stress we have in life, because of all the things that are going on in our heads that we're just trying to sort through, and it can feel really overwhelming. And when you're overwhelmed like that just begets more negative energy. And so I think meditation can be a really powerful tool for just kind of creating that space in your head. And so really, really opening up to kind of lessen that overwhelm so that you have space to bring in some positivity.
And I know just last week I was having a conversation with the CEO, and I just asked him, I said, what are your thoughts on meditation? And we had a really good conversation about what does meditation look like? There's a lot of different ways to do this. And for some people, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's mowing the lawn, but just getting outside of what I'm working on and just slowing the brain down and being quiet with yourself. When you do that, you start to take over control from the autopilot.
Yep. Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of like this mindset of limitations versus this mindset of possibility. And I think when there's too much going in your head, that the limitation focus can really just take over, to your point, the autopilot. And when you start to create space, it's like, oh, okay, I could do this, or oh, maybe I could go that route, right? But you have to have that space in your head. And meditation, or, I also hear people talk about like sort of getting in the zone. Maybe it is when you're going for a walk, or when you exercise, or for some people, like when they're out riding horses, or, whatever. Maybe there's an activity that you do where it's like, man, like my brain just opens up and I stop. Like, I just stop all of the thinking, right? Like part of the problem is we just sometimes think too much. And so, whatever that activity is for you, there might be that thing where you just feel like you get in the zone and you can chill out and actually just sort of open some space in your mind. So I think that is really good to make sure you're creating time to do those activities, because they will help you cultivate that more positive mindset over time. One of the other strategies, and I guess there's two, and then I just thought of one that I want to add. So don't let me forget to come back to this one. But one of the things we added to our list was journaling. So journaling can be a really relaxing, introspective activity for people that I think can help create that positive mind. Wade, what's your kind of thoughts around journaling?
Yeah, so I didn't journal up until the last few years. And when I started doing that, it's just amazing how much better I felt about things. It's just, and actually, let's include in the show notes, Amanda, there's a Robin Sharma YouTube video about, I think, the 7 benefits of journaling. It's really good stuff. And one of the things that he says, I believe it's in that one, is, when you are journaling, especially when you're writing down a great experience. Okay. So, I was with a coaching client this morning who had their 18-month-old grandson with them, staying with them over the weekend, and had a great experience with them. Fell asleep in his arms and that kind of thing. And I asked him, I said, have you ever journaled? And he hadn't, but I said, here's the thing about journaling that's really neat, especially in this situation. You get to relive the best parts of life. So you're writing, you went through that experience, then you're reliving it because you're writing about it. And guess what? Then you always have it to go back to. And that's really cool. So there's a lot of benefits. So check out the Robin Sharma YouTube video. That's really good stuff.
Awesome. I put in my list, as well as how to invest in yourself, is some version of personal or professional development. Now, obviously, we are kind of biased since we work in this space, but I really think that investing in really impactful personal and professional development is one more way to continue putting yourself in a growth mindset. Place, right? So it's starting to think about what's possible for me. I keep saying this over and over again, but I think a real challenge for many people is they're constantly thinking about what they can't do instead of thinking about what they can do. And I think really good personal and professional development is designed to put you in that growth mindset so you can get back to thinking, what can I do? What's in my power? And every time you do that, you are putting yourself back in the driver's seat. And that is automatically a more positive place to be, is in control of where you want to go. And so if there are opportunities out there for you to go to a workshop or a seminar or get coaching, I think that is a really powerful tool in cultivating more positivity, because it gets you thinking longer term, in the future, what's possible, versus just kind of your day to day, again, to go back to your phrase, autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. When you let go of the BS story that I'm too busy, mm. And that's really what we're going to be talking about here today, is how to layer that in throughout your day so that, you can get it all done and have a better attitude, as you take on what's going on that day.
Absolutely. And before we move on, I have just one thought, and this is the one that popped into my head, so I did not forget it. One of the things that I think comes up a lot in when people are talking about being more positive is kind of getting off of social media. Obviously there can be a lot of negativity, a lot of just not so good stuff out there. But one thing that I have really done that I think is helpful, because I don't always think it's realistic to just like go cold turkey. I mean, some people it is like, some people just like, nope, I'm done. I'm not doing this, or they never were on it to begin with. And that's fine. But some people don't want to do that. One thing that I have really done, and I've used it kind of platform specific, is with Instagram specifically, I have really shifted to making that like my motivational, inspirational feed, right? So I follow people who are motivational speakers, people like Mel Robbins, people like Brene Brown, like all of these kind of really positive people who are constantly posting quotes or videos or, things to reflect on. And so I always find myself when I'm kind of having, maybe in a down mood or feeling like I need a pick me up, that like that's the first channel I go to, because I've specifically cultivated it to be a positive place to go for positive content. So that's just something to think about if you're feeling like, man, they want me to be more positive, which means I need to get off social media. Sometimes you can actually purposefully create what you want to see. And if you want to see more positivity, there's a way to do that.
Yeah, and one of the things that a couple of coaching clients have done over the last year is stop watching the news. It's amazing how much better they felt after they shut the morning news off, the nightly news off, shut it off. And you know what? If something big happens, you can hear about it through a friend or whatever. But man, it is amazing how much better they felt when they made that intentional choice to just say, you know what, I'm not going to let them determine where my mind goes.
And I think that's the key in all of these things, is making it a choice, right? So, maybe one person says no news, another person says I'm going to limit it to, one day a week I'm going to do my summary just so I feel like I know what's going on in the world, and that's my choice. Or maybe you say, you know what, it's my choice to journal twice a week, or someone says, you know what, I'm going to journal every single day. Or it's my choice to be on social media, or I'm going to get off entirely, right? Like, the trick, I think, to all of this is, again, being in the driver's seat, making conscious choices versus just being along for the ride. And all too often, I think when we're in the negative mindset, it's because we're just along for the ride. Because I can choose to engage in things that most people might think are negative, but because of how I come to them, I have a more positive mindset about it. So I think the choice part is what's really critical.
I remember listening to a podcast with a CEO who was talking to the owner of a newspaper, and he suggested, it'd be really cool if you had a bar at the top that you could dial up or dial down the positive content based on what you want to read. And the owner of the newspaper said, yeah, that's a good idea. We're not going to do that though. Yeah, but think how neat that would be, is if you could just take in the positive content that they put out, instead of being force fed something that, you really just have no interest in.
Yep. Well, and that I think is what's cool about some things online, is you can create some of that customization for yourself, that I'm sure, yes, that newspaper man definitely does not want to do that. But I just think of like, and of course, now I'm not going to be able to think of the names, but I just think of all of the Facebook groups or you can create RSS feeds for yourself, right? That come from certain sources that always tend to bring like positive stories. And so I think that's something that you can do if you want to. You can kind of almost manually create that positive news feed for yourself every day. It could be a cool thing. So, Wade, we've talked a lot about the what, right? So we talk meditation, music, video, books, podcasts, personal development, journaling. How do you create some of this investing in yourself time? How do you make sure that it's not just once in a while, but that you're doing this regularly?
Yeah, so a couple different ideas. For those of you who spend a lot of time traveling, for your work, turning that road time into university time, so self-improvement time for Wade, that really helped me a lot, and it really changed how I showed up when I arrived at the farm gate. Um, Another thing is, creating a routine where, as soon as I get back from the gym in the morning, if you have a good gym routine, I'm going to spend 15 minutes reading a book or whatever that is, but anchoring it to some other habit you already have. But even if you just read, think of it this way, if you just read 10 pages a day in 1 month, that's 300 pages, that's a book a month. How many of us are reading a book a month? That's a big improvement for a lot of people. But just finding 10 minutes to read 10 pages, I think can make a huge impact. But just kind of layering it in different times in the day, and but being intentional about your choices.
Yeah, I love the idea of making it into a routine. And I want to just reinforce something you said right there about anchoring. So people may have heard Mark and I talk about this, but like this is the idea of tying a feeling to a certain piece of content. A lot of times it is music. So if there is a piece of music that always makes you feel pumped up, like tie that to an event, right? So let's say you go make a big sale, you play that piece of music, or let's say you're going to the gym, you play that piece of music. Let's say you're going into kind of a scary conversation and you want to feel more positive. Now you've got this song that is always tied to positive feelings. So maybe you play that song before you go into the scary conversation to feel more energized, more positive. So that anchoring can be a really powerful tool if you're kind of dedicated to creating that mental note for yourself.
Yeah, I remember Tony Robbins grew up in a pretty rough household and had a rough childhood. And when he started seeing success in his own career, he put on weight big time. And so he really battled with eating and his weight loss. I think he gained like 40 pounds overnight, it seemed like. And he realized that in his subconscious, it was very difficult to push away a plate that wasn't clean. And so his process to work through that was pretty interesting. And that's where I'm going with this. He practiced pushing away a plate with food on it, and then had the celebration music going on every time he did that. And he did that dozens and dozens of times to finally get over the fact that it's okay to push away that plate of food.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? So Tony in that situation was trying to anchor a positive feeling he associated with a certain song with a behavior that traditionally had made him feel bad, but now he's trying to connect it to something that makes him feel more positive. So I think that's exactly what we're looking for with an anchoring behavior is we're trying to change that hardwiring, right? So if we have a behavior that we usually think of as bad, tying it to something else that always makes us feel good can start to shift that hardwiring in our head, and kind of reassociate a better feeling with that certain behavior. I think that's spot on. I mean, heck, that's why we listen to pump you up music before you go to the gym, right? Because probably early on in that new gym behavior, you're not real excited to go. So tying it into some music, whether that's, some AC/DC or whatever it is that pumps you up in the morning, that is anchoring, is trying to create a positive feeling with a certain behavior. So awesome. And I think that's actually a really good segue into number 3 on our list. The number 3 way to add more positivity is to fill your tank. And when we say fill your tank, we're talking about building positive energy. So I think we can all think of times where we've been tired, we've been hungry, we've been very sloth like, and it's not very easy to be positive when you are in those sorts of states. So, when we are talking about filling your energy tank, we're really talking about 3 things: exercise, eating food that gives you energy, and not just caffeine, but food that gives you energy sustained, and sleep. So, Wade, talk to me about how, number one, how do you incorporate these types of things? But also, like, how do you encourage your clients to really feel fill their energy tank?
Yeah, one of the resources that I like to share, at least in my coaching calls, is The Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod. working on yourself first. So getting up a little bit earlier and doing the things that you know you want to do, but maybe you don't feel like doing. So I think with all of this stuff, everybody understands that it's important. It's just not urgent. And so Hal does a really nice job of talking about, okay, what's it going to take to make sure that we put first things first. So since I listened to that, I started getting up earlier, which at first was a little bit of a struggle. I remember when I first started getting up at 5 o'clock, I would fall asleep at 5 o'clock in the evening. And Nicole actually told me, she's like, you just need to sleep in more. Well, eventually your body adjusts and you get better at getting up early. And so now I'm not going to say I'm batting 1,000, but it's definitely, over 900. And when my alarm goes off at 4:20, I get up out of bed and go work on this first. And so my morning routine consists of going to the Y at 5 o'clock, working out for about an hour. Then it's getting cleaned up, but then I've got my devotion time, I've got my meditation, I've got my journal time. And when I do that first, I show up differently on my first call. I know it was about a year ago. I had a 6:45 a.m. phone meeting with a global head of sales. And I showed up on the call and I said, okay, this is what we have, 1, 2, 3. And after about 5 minutes, we had wrapped up what we needed to do. And he said, man, Wade, you brought your A game today. And I said, well, when you get up at 4:30, that's what shows up. He's like, Wade, if you're getting up at 4:30, you win. And guess what? We signed the deal. So it was good in that situation. But I just know that when I do my morning ritual, I just have such a greater capacity throughout the rest of my day. And so it's gotten to the point where I'm addicted to that feeling where I am not going to go into my day without doing those things first.
Yep, absolutely. I think that morning routine is critical. Now, I do want to say, I think we understand there are people, we all operate on slightly different schedules, different sleep needs, different day, maybe you work night shifts and that early morning doesn't work for you, right? So it's not necessarily the strict, when does that routine happen, but I think it is really important to create a routine for yourself, because otherwise you go into your day kind of haphazardly. So if you can start your day with purpose, so if it's like, my morning routine consists of exercise, meditation, and breakfast, or reading a book and journaling and whatever, right? Like whatever that routine is for you. And obviously there's some key elements that we think are important to that routine. But the idea of just creating a routine in general, can be really powerful, because then you're starting your day every day on your terms versus just reacting to whatever might happen around you. So for Wade, I think you and I are pretty similar, maybe different on when these things happen, but both kind of morning exercise people. I know we have clients who are, lunchtime or after work exercisers. So like if that's what fits your routine better, awesome. Like just, that's awesome that you're getting it in. And again, exercise is something that it does get pushed to the back burner for a lot of people, because in our heads, yeah, we know we should, but it's just either not that important to us, or it doesn't feel as urgent as some other things. And I think all of these things in terms of exercising, eating right, I added to my list staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, and getting enough sleep. These are all definitely things that these are for the long game. You may not like it in the short term, but this is about taking care of yourself in the long run. And again, the day will come that if you're not taking care of these things, it will be really hard for you to have positivity on a day-to-day basis, because you will be tired, you will be hungry, you will just feel like not doing anything. I add sound effects sometimes. But but if you can figure out a way to make these a priority now, whether that's in creating a routine at a certain time of day or just putting them on your calendar. If you go back several episodes, Christina and I talked about, making a commitment to yourself, making a meeting notice with yourself to get to the gym or to go for a walk or whatever that is for you. If you can commit to that now, that is really going to help your ability to have a positive attitude on a day-to-day basis for the long run. It's just how it works, folks. So I think continually going back to filling your energy tank is really important. Wade, go ahead.
Yeah, I know it was probably a year and a half ago. I went on a prospect call with Mark, and we were gone most of the day, and I got home to my house about 1:30 in the morning, and I remember going to sleep that night, telling myself, okay, I'm tired. I'm not going to work out tomorrow because, I've earned it. I've earned a day off because I came home so late from this prospect meeting. And the next day didn't go as well as I would have liked. And I'll never forget that one particular day. And that was my aha moment when I discovered that, you know what, it's not worth it. It's not worth skipping that workout routine. And so, even if it's at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning instead of 5 a.m., I'm going to start my day with my morning ritual because I show up different and the rest of the day goes better when I do those things.
Yep. And I just want to put this note in here. Like, I don't know if people thinking or people listening to this think that we're a bunch of like crazy health nuts. I think probably every single one of us on our team, every single person you'll hear on the podcast has not been like a big fitness person at some point in our lives. And so like we don't bring this advice from a place of like, yes, we have always been fitness nuts. Like these are things that we have learned as we've incorporated these things into our lives that have really brought us benefit. So we want to recommend them to all of you guys listening because, if we've benefited, we're sure there's some other folks who could benefit from them as well. So fill your energy tank, exercise, food, water, sleep, get it in. Number 4. All right, Wade. Number 4, in the ways to add more positivity, you described as we need to get real. What does that mean?
Yeah, when I think about, what it means to bring our best self, that's really the goal here. And then, in working with salespeople, working with leaders, changing how we define success. Okay, so instead of success is did I make the sale or did I buy the grain, success is did I bring my best self to that sales call. And when you redefine what winning is, it becomes sustainable. Okay, and in doing so, we need to be authentic. We need to be ourselves, and how I show up is going to be different than how you show up, and how it's going to be different than anybody else. So we need to be ourselves and not try to be anyone else. But one thing I just want to bring attention to is, when you show up, and let's just use the farm call as an example, but when you show up on that person's farm, you never know what has happened to them in the last day or the last week. And so being, it sounds cheesy, but that beacon of light, where you might be the best thing that's happened to them in weeks. You just never know. And so I think it's important for us to always bring our best selves wherever we're at, because it might be the best part of their day. And, I know I've said this before, but people won't always remember what you say. They always remember how you made them feel. That is so legit. And so making sure that we are leaving them in a better place than when we found them.
Yeah, I often think the energy you put out into the world is the energy that comes back to you. So if you are making the conscious choice to, be authentically you, to be kind, to be pleasant, right? Smile, say please and thank you. Like, you don't know, you may be the only person who does those things for somebody else in a given day. Like, think of all the people you work with or all the people you run into who have not had someone just tell them a kind hello or say thank you for the work you do or just give them a smile. Like, I know it seems weird, but there are probably a lot of people who don't experience that from anyone else on any given day. And so if you can put out that ray of sunshine into the light, into the world, I am convinced that that ray of sunshine will come back to you. And so looking for opportunities to bring that energy is a way to bring more positivity back to you.
And look them in the eye. When you're at the grocery store and checking out, when they ask you, did you find everything okay? Looking them in the eye and actually connecting with them, not just giving them a flippant answer. It's amazing how much, that little thing of looking them in the eye and being sincere in your answer makes an impact in their day.
Absolutely. I do want to put a little caveat on this. So, obviously, this whole episode is about positivity and having more positive interactions, more positive thoughts. I do want to put a little caveat that what Wade and I are saying is not to bottle up your emotions and pretend to be happy when you're not. Right. So we are all human beings. We all have a range of emotions. And so whenever we plaster over more negative emotions, like say you're feeling sad or say you're grieving or, say you're angry, if we bottle those up, and I think we all know people who just bottle their feelings, shove them down deep, 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 and never deal with them. The reality is like, that's a pot of water ready to boil over. That is when one day we just blow up or we just say we've had enough and throw our hands in the air, right? So what we are not saying is pretend to be happy, pretend to be positive, even when you're feeling something else, because that is not productive in any way, shape, or form for anybody. Because you will explode and the people around you will be like, whoa, where did that come from? But we are saying that when you are feeling maybe in a bad mood, recognize the mood you're in. Maybe there's a lesson there that you need to listen to. Maybe there's a trigger going on that you need to deal with, whatever that is. But then you get to make a conscious choice. Do I let this one situation take over my day, or do I choose to take a different path? We all have that power. So again, we're not saying bottle up your emotions and never deal with them, but we are saying, you get to make a conscious choice. I once heard someone say, and I'll try and remember the phrase here, but it's, was it actually a bad day, or was it a bad 5 minutes that you let ruin the entire day? And to me, that is just like, that is such a perspective check that so often it's the latter. We had a bad 5 minutes and we let it ruin the entire day instead of actually having a full bad day. Cause actually that probably rarely happens. And so you get to make a choice. Do I let the 5 minutes carry across, or do I say, you know what? Yep, those 5 minutes really sucked, but moving forward, I'm not going to choose to let it take over all of my emotions and all of my day. So I don't know, Wade, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is a choice, and that's the key. I know Nicole and I, as we raise our kids, we probably use the word choose, choice. What are you going to choose? Probably dozens of times every day, just to layer in that messaging that it's, you get to choose how you feel. So Tony Robbins puts it this way. He said, if you go to your garden, we're not telling you to say there are no weeds, there are no weeds. We're saying go pick the weeds and work through it, and that's really the key to this whole thing. Kind of on a little bit different angle on this, it's kind of interesting how I'm reading through Tiger Woods' biography right now, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. But one thing that I read in there that really stood out to me was how Tiger grew up in I think everybody knows his epic meltdown here, just a few years ago, from being on top of the world to now, it's a little bit different getting people to invest in him for marketing purposes. But he grew up in a household where, if you have a feeling or if you're, going through something, just shove it under the rug. Just, don't bring it up. Don't talk about it. Just pretend it's not there. And to your point exactly, Amanda, every time we do that, it comes up again. And usually the longer we put it off, the more epic the meltdown is.
Absolutely. So that kind of takes care of the caveat I wanted to make sure that we included in this. But the other point that we had under this idea of getting real, being authentic, bringing positivity to the people around you, is to be conscious about the culture that you're trying to create. Now, that might be your family culture, right? So, in your household, Wade, you mentioned you guys are trying to create a culture where we understand our choice and our power in any given situation. That also it applies to work culture. So, do you want to be creating an organization that is negative or always looks for what's wrong with things or is always trying to fix things versus building on the possibility? Think it's really important to know that like you have a role in creating a culture in whatever world is around you, whether it's at home, in your community, at work. Often I think we talk about the fact that culture starts at the top and trickles down, and I think there's definitely truth to that. But the reality is culture also comes with it from within and is dependent on everybody reinforcing the culture that you want to create. So Wade, I know you had a couple of thoughts on this, but I think this idea of culture is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. When there are multiple salespeople, let's just talk about, agronomy salespeople, multiple salespeople at one location. It's amazing how somebody goes out and has a bad sales call. They come back, and what do? They share their negative experience with the people around them who, oh yeah, you think that's bad? And then they top it. And then next thing you know, nobody is leaving the location because, well, gosh, nobody wants to talk to us anyways. If I go out there, I'm just going to get yelled at or I'm going to get kicked off the farm. And you start to tell yourself a story and seek out evidence to prove it. And, that is something that it's something to be aware of. Okay. The other thing is, just be aware that there are people out there who use things like sarcasm to not have to get real with people around them. So, if somebody has a motivational quote, they have a sarcastic response that everybody laughs at. But guess what? That is creating a culture where motivation and positivity is, going to be laughed at or made fun of or kidded about. And we might think that's all in good fun, but you need to be aware that somebody somewhere is not taking it as such. And that's part of the culture that you're creating. The other thing I'll say is just, when you ask somebody, how are you doing today? I'm fine. How are you really doing? And just creating a space where you can, get one-on-one with somebody and just say, it just seems like there's something else going on. Are you doing okay? And don't settle for the surface level answers. I think that's part of leaving a positive impression, that the fact that you care. And I think that's part of the culture that you create as well.
I think that's really interesting what you just said there in terms of creating a culture where you demonstrate to people around you that you care. Sometimes I think we associate positivity with like, oh, everything's wonderful and everything's fine. But sometimes the way to create a long-term culture of positivity is creating that space for listening and empathy so that we can work through the hard stuff in order to get to the more positive stuff. So I think that's a really important point that I just wanted to sort of highlight because all too often we don't listen to each other. We don't create a space for people to air what they're struggling with because maybe maybe it feels negative in the moment, or maybe it just makes us kind of uncomfortable. But if we want to really create more positive interactions, that comes back to creating real relationships with people, and empathy is a huge part of that. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and there's a great TED Talk that hits that note exactly, and it's about the super chicken TED Talk. And as much fun as it is to say super chicken, essentially it's about the value of the relationships versus just getting stuff done. And there are cultures out there where you just go into your cubicle and get your work done and go home. And then there's other cultures where people get together after work and they hang out together and they go to lunch together, and there's value in that space. I'll let everybody watch the video and see it for themselves, but it is a fantastic TED Talk on how to create a positive culture.
Perfect. And I will make sure to link to that in the show notes. The final way on our list, at least for today, to add more positivity to your life is appreciations. Now, Wade, the last time you were on the show, we talked all about appreciations and the power of appreciations. But I mean, we can sum it up this way, right? It is really hard to be grumpy when you're grateful, right? So if I am in a bad mood and I say, okay, what's something I can be thankful for in this moment? It's going to turn that switch just a little bit. It might not solve all the world's problems, but in that moment, finding something to be grateful for, finding something to appreciate, I think can be a really powerful tool to just shifting that bad mood just a little bit. So, Wade, I know for anybody who wants to go in depth on this topic, go check out the last episode with Wade. I think it was episode maybe 61. And we go deep into that. But talk to me what are some of the strategies that you use, or what are some of the ways that you use to show appreciation as a way of generating positivity?
Yeah, so for the people who are familiar with the Thrive with Five, so the daily list of, these are the 10 actions that I want to make sure are part of each and every day. And one of them is, did I tell people, did I show people that I appreciate them and what they're doing? And, that's as simple as that sounds, that simple process is huge in terms of a longer term result. And one of my favorite stories from a coaching client 1 year ago was that he went back after the live event at an MGST live event, and we got on our first coaching call. I asked him, so how have things been going? And he said, they've been going pretty well. He said, my wife's not yelling at me as much. My boss isn't yelling at me as much. And it seems like our customers aren't yelling at me as much. And I said, so what's the common denominator here? Well, I guess it's me. And for this 58-year-old grain originator, that's a really big takeaway that changed how he showed up at work. And when we do that, when we take time to tell people and show people that we appreciate them, as we talked last time, Amanda, we're just going to see more of it. But a couple of other things that other clients have done, keeping an appreciation journal, just taking notes on, one thing a day on what I appreciate about my spouse, or about my kids, or even that guy that triggers me. Guess what? If you start keeping track of the things that you appreciate about them, that relationship will shift. We've seen it time and time and time again. But the other thing I'd say is just look for the lesson in any experience. So with any negative experience, there's a lesson in everything. And Wayne Dyer does a great job of talking about that, and, look for the lessons in life and appreciate the lessons in life. So even when something breaks down, okay, so what can I learn from this? What can I be, what can I get better how can I get better as a result of this experience? And when you shift that mindset, you will show up differently next time.
Yep. I wanted to share a couple of examples on this topic. So one, I had a coaching client who she was really struggling with her relationship with her dad, right? So they owned cattle together. So basically, they were owning business together. Wade, I know you have experience kind of working with family in a business setting, and she was really struggling. Just like tempers were short, things weren't getting done. It was not fun. And one of the things that we started to talk about is number one, what's in your control? And as part of that conversation, we started talking about appreciations. How often do you tell your dad that you appreciate what he does around the farm? Or how often do you tell him that you appreciate what he helped you with or for the advice he gave you on something, right? How often are you telling him that? And she said, never, right? And so our challenge was that she started, sharing some of those appreciations with her dad. And she said, and it was amazing. He started telling me what he appreciated about me in return, and it was totally unprompted, right? So it goes back to the energy you put out in the world often becomes the energy that you receive. So by showing appreciation to her dad, he automatically started reciprocating that without even having to be told to. So I think that's a challenge to go out to everyone. I don't know why, especially, but I think we often take our personal relationships for granted, whether that's family like this girl with her dad or spouses, right? We just assume that they'll always be there. So we lose track of telling them that we appreciate the things they do and that we appreciate their role in our lives. But it really goes for anyone. Appreciations are really powerful in not only creating more positivity, but creating stronger relationships. So that was one example of, I just think, the power of appreciations in life. The other one was kind of along the lines of that last thing you said about how do I learn from the hard things, right? So I've had coaching calls where, folks will come on and they will just want to rant and rave about the bad thing that happened to them that day or that week, right? Oh, this customer was blah, 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 or oh, my boss, blah, 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 right? Like it's all about what went horribly. But the minute I start to ask them, okay, what did you learn that you can be grateful for, that you'll now know to do something different in the future? That whole negative energy rant rave mindset, like that attitude just starts to dissipate. Like they start to just sort of chill out, because the minute we start thinking, what did I learn? How could I do this differently? What am I appreciative of? Like, it is impossible to keep that level of anger when we start thinking in a positive appreciation mindset. So I really challenge folks to listen, or who are listening, to really think, like, in the moment when I'm really pissed off, how can I challenge myself to find the lesson? Because that is the positive energy that will counteract the anger or whatnot and help you work through it a little more productively.
Yeah, Amanda, I'd really love to do a multi-generational family business event specific, for anybody in any industry. But, having been there and done that, I know we have tools that can help people. And when you think about what's most important, you know, everybody will say family comes first, but is that really how things are being decided? And so, yeah, at some point, Amanda, we need to put that event together, because that could serve a lot of people and serve them for generations.
For sure, for sure. So that brings us to the end of our list. Just to re-summarize the top 5 ways, at least for today, to add more positivity. 1, be purposeful about who you're spending your time with. Number 2, find ways to invest in yourself. Number 3, fill up that energy tank. Number 4, get real, be authentic. And number 5, look for ways to show appreciation. So Wade, as we wrap up our conversation, bring us home. What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think everybody probably can think of a situation where, you're watching your favorite sports team. Just for our own personal experience here this last weekend, my son had a baseball game, and 2 very evenly matched teams, and they went head to head for 4 innings, and it was just back and forth, back and forth. It was a real nail biter. Then all of a sudden there was one error and the floodgates opened and the other team scored 10 runs before they got another out. And it was just like, holy cow. But why I bring this up is because you could just see in their body language, you could just see it. And, that is so important. And so, using that sports analogy, I think is a great visual exercise in what it looks like to show up confident and ready to go, and what it feels like when you show up and you're already beaten.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to choice, right? You know, if you make a mistake, I love the sports analogy for this too. I always think of football teams, like where a quarterback throws an interception, right? That quarterback, and it's happened to all of them, but that quarterback has a choice in that moment to let it derail the rest of the game, or to say, you know what, it happened, can't do anything about it now. It's time to brush myself off, get my head back on straight, and get back in the game. We all have those moments every single day where we throw an interception, right? It might be us. Maybe we did something that was a screw up. It might be somebody else. Maybe somebody else did something that's triggering for us, or that creates more headache or adds more to your plate, right? You don't always have control over some of these things, right? When a quarterback throws an interception, the defense, doesn't have a choice but to get back on the field. That's just how it works. But we have a choice to let that moment derail us for the rest of the day, or to say, yep, it happened, can't do anything about it now, let's brush myself off, get my head back on straight, and move forward. And so I just think it's really important to be purposeful, that once you've decided that, hey, I want to have more positivity in my life, then you get to take the steps that we've talked about here today to make it happen. It all comes back to choice. So Wade, thank you very much for once again joining me and talking about a little positivity. Hopefully there's some things that people will be able to put to use. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate the opportunity to get out here and talk about, these are 5 ways to add more positivity to your day. These are great tools, but it's your choice whether you pick up the tool and use it.
Very good. Thanks again to Wade for joining us on the pod this week. To connect with him further, just look for Wade Johannes on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Snapchat. If you like what you heard, make sure to jump over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback, and it also helps other people find the show. As always, if you're looking for more resources to go from surviving to thriving, check out our website at www.markjeweltraining.com. That's Jewel with 2 L's. And you can find us under Mark Jewel Speaking and Training on all the major social networks. Remember, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. See you next week.